Hey everyone, Ariel Adams here with a blog to watch. I've got a really special treat for you. Casio sent us some watches from their archives to celebrate the 50 years of making watches. In 1974, they came out with their very first watch, the Casiotron, and they put together an interesting assortment of first watches, interesting watches, and some crazy things. These are 50 timepieces. We're gonna go through the highlights for 50 years. It's gonna be from me and a few of the other blog to watch team members. Let's get into it. So this isn't the first wristwatch Casio ever made, but it was made 2 years later in 1976. This is a slight modification of the original Casiotron, and this is a Casiotron. And I think it's really cool because it really shows you where Casio wristwatches got started, what the original dials and wearing experience would have been like. Here's the reissue that was made in 2024 of the original Casiotron. So you can see the similarity here, but this is a really interesting piece of Casio gadget watch history and really where it all began.
Hey, I'm Ed Ree, and these are my favorite picks from a pretty cool collection of Casios that span the last 5 decades. And we're gonna start with this DBC V500 from 1999. The DB in the name stands for a data bank, which means you can store up to 30 different phone number entries in this watch. The C stands for calculator, and there's a small little numerical calculator pad on the front. And then the V is actually for the voice recorder function. So this has a record play button and a microphone and speakers so that you can take voice memos on the go. And I'll just show you real quick how you do that. You just hit the mode to voice, and then you hold down record. And then you record testing, 1, 2, 3. Stop. You know, it's not the best audio quality out there, obviously, but it certainly is functional, and I'm someone that does occasionally make voice memos on my iPhone now, so I could totally see using this back in the day to keep track of these memos. So kind of cool that it has that very specific functionality built into this watch.
I'm Ripley Sellers, and here are my favorite Casio watches from the last 50 years. Up first is the TC500. In 1983, Casio made the first G-Shock, but they also made this watch. Now, we all know the Casio calculator with its buttons. This is a very different execution. Rather than having buttons, the whole thing is a touchscreen. So there's buttons on the side, you press one, and then the whole screen turns into a touchscreen to then enter the numbers. Is it fiddly and tedious to use? 100%. And this is why they switched to the more standard button calculator in later generations. But pieces like this show that Casio is far ahead of the game with touchscreen watches.
In 1983, Casio came out with the first ever G-Shock, and it's this one. This is from the archive, and they've made watches since that look exactly like this, but this is the original 1983 TW7000C. This watch was really innovative at the time because it was drop resistant. You could drop this watch from very, very high, and it was fine. Casio has since, over the years, made these watches way more durable, but this is the G-Shock that started it all. It was revolutionary at the time because nothing else looked like it, and it was really important because nothing else was as durable as it. So in 2023, Casio had the 40th anniversary of G-Shock, but now in 2024 is the 50th anniversary of them making watches altogether.
This next watch is from 1984. This is the Casio AT552, also known as the Janus. Believe it or not, this is a Casio calculator watch, despite the fact that it doesn't have a numeric pad. And that's because this is a gesture-controlled touchscreen calculator. If you turn the crystal just to the side, you can see in the light the circuitry running across the crystal that is allowing the touch gestures. So the way this works is that you literally just draw what you want to do onto the screen. So 1 is a 1, 2 is a 2, 3, 4, etc. And then, you know, plus sign, minus, all the operations, and then equals, 2 lines across. And it would pop out the number for you for the calculation that you're doing. You know, obviously we live in a world where we interact with our technology via touch on a daily basis. So it's really cool to see that technology, albeit in a very rudimentary form, exist in this watch from nearly 40 years ago. It's kind of a glimpse into the future. It was a watch very much ahead of its time.
During the 1990s, Casio started to stretch the boundaries of what constituted a tool watch, and in 1992 they created this, the CMD40 wrist remote. What this is it's a digital watch that can also control your TV just like a regular remote control. My friend had one of these in elementary school, and the crazy thing about it was that it actually worked. He could change the TV with his watch, and it worked most of the time. Was it a novelty? Absolutely, but it was also functional, and in a sense, this can be seen as a 21st century tool watch for those times when you couldn't find the remote and still wanted to change the TV.
The next watch we're going to look at is the Casio from 1984, known as the Melody Alarm. And what this watch did was take the little beeping alarm and make it a lot more interesting. So there was a small musical board in here, and there was even little holes for the speakers so you could hear it really loud. And there's a bunch of various melodies that it could play, such as Happy Birthday and some other things like that. And so the idea was that not only could it play a special melody on a certain occasion, but you could set the various alarms to play more than just a boring set of beeps. Since then, it's actually quite rare to see stuff like this in Casio timepieces, but in this era, in the mid-1980s, there was such a wonderful variety, and I really wish they would come back with something like the Melody Alarm.
Okay, so this next watch is from 1985. This is the Casio TW7000, and it's Casio in titanium. Obviously, Casio uses titanium across a number of its collections throughout its entire catalog today. I'm most partial to the titanium squares, and what I love about this particular watch, this TW7000, is that you can really see kind of the genesis for a lot of those same design cues. Obviously, you can see the square face, the 4 buttons on the side. The biggest difference are its proportions. This watch measures just under 35 millimeters across, which compared to modern G-Shock squares is quite a bit smaller. Being made out of titanium, it's an incredibly light wear on the wrist. It really just disappears. And when you look at this watch, it's kind of like looking at the great-grandfather of the titanium G-Shock squares that we know and love today.
These days, one of the main reasons people choose a smartwatch is for its health and fitness tracking capabilities. But in 1993, Casio created the BP300 blood pressure monitor. It's a watch with a sensor on the front, and the idea of this was that you'd put your finger on it and it would tell you both your pulse and blood pressure. Was this very accurate? Probably not, but this does show, once again, that Casio was far ahead of the curve when it came to thinking about what a wristwatch could be, and you could think of this as the first fitness tracker long before we came into the realm of Apple Watches and Fitbits.
In 1999, Casio came out with the world's first GPS wristwatch in the ProTrek family, and here it is. It was a beast. It wasn't the prettiest looking watch, but it was the first timepiece to include GPS. Pretty much every major smartwatch does right now, and companies like Garmin took this concept and went further with it later. But wow, what an innovative thing. A wristwatch that could communicate with the global position satellite system network around the world. It could actually tell you your longitude and latitude and a bunch of other interesting things. Obviously, this was a watch for people that really needed the performance. Nobody was just wearing this on the street, but wow, the original ProTrek GPS watch from Casio back from 1999.
My favorite piece from the entire collection is one that's purely rooted in nostalgia, and it's the Casio CA53W. Some of you may know this as the Back to the Future watch. This is Marty McFly's watch that he wears in Back to the Future. I had this watch growing up. I don't know what happened to it. I'm kind of bummed about it, but this is the classic Casio calculator style that I grew up with and I still love to this very day. So yeah, this is my favorite. It just really reminds me of my childhood, and you know, it's a little bit sentimental for me because this is one of the first watches that I ever remember owning. So it's really representative of me just getting into watches to begin with.
So we hope you enjoyed this Blog to Watch look at some of the most interesting watches of Casio's 50-year history. I'm excited about these watches as much as I was when I first learned about them. Please go to the Blog to Watch website and check it out. Just a reminder, this is the 2024 re-edition of the original 1974 Casiotron. This is a really cool watch, and I hope you check out our coverage on A Blog to Watch. Thanks so much, and let us know what your favorite watches from Casio's history are.